Last night while I was doing the tour, Logan entered this door and thought a bomb and started to talk to people. It was really embarrassing. Okay, this is the Google Arts and Culture website I use, and this is the castle where Leonardo da Vinci died in 1519. But I would like to start at the place where he was born, which he didn't have. Do you know much about his life, about his idea?
A bit, yes, but
So
yeah.
he was the son of a notary, so a man who had a quite an important role in society. But he was the son of one of let's say adventures of his father, who wasn't married, was a young man, and made one of the servants, one of the farmers, pregnant. So the mother probably spent not more than 2 3 years with the son, and then as soon as he was weaned and was able to be looked after by the grandfather, he probably grew up with the grandfather. So Leonardo was father was called Piero, and the grandfather was as well a notary, and he was actually born in this little. Let me see, what is it? If I can find it without the, I think it's here. So this is the little town of Vinci. Vinci is just on the way between Florence, which is here, Firenze, and the sea, so nearby Empoli. So if you drive from Florence to the sea, to the coast, to Livorno, you actually see it. And it's a very green and very quiet and nice area. There is I think this is Leonardo's house. It's up here somewhere.
Casa Leonardo.
Yeah, there is actually a small museum. Not there is much there because it hasn't been. Here it is. It sounds outside on the countryside, and what I love you to show to you is just we can use some pictures to look at it from it outside. It's a very simple country house, although they had money. But when he was born, the family lived here, the grandparents. Then the grandfather was quite old and had a much younger wife. The grandmother, Leonardo's grandmother, was the daughter of an artist who was making pottery. So there was some artistry in the family. They were making painted, decorated ceramics and pottery, which is still one of the main productions in Italy. But from this house, which is quite a simple country house, you see, just a stone Tuscany country house. There are thousands of this in Tuscany, thousands like this. If you look around, there's nothing but nature, bushes, fields, olive trees. There's nothing. You can't see anything else. And I think this played an important role in Leonardo's childhood. The fact that he was able to explore the natural environment as a kid, instead of growing up in a city, and also the fact that he had no father. The father basically moved to Florence, and he didn't live with the father. So you can see this is the other side of the house. It's quite a small house, and basically he was raised by the grandfather, and he was raised by the set of pictures I prepare. By the younger, he had a younger uncle. The father had a younger brother who was probably 15 when Leonardo was in the early years of his life. So it was about 10, 15 years older than him. So basically, Leonardo's life didn't have the best start. The father married to a woman who couldn't give him children, and so the fact that he had already a child from a previous marriage also made her feeling bad about it. So probably the kid wasn't around too much, and we only know that later on, maybe when he was about 10 or 15, around 14 or 15 years of age, he moved to Florence, but he didn't live with his father. He went to study and to work in the workshop of Verrocchio, which was one of the greatest and most advanced artists of his time. I have a couple of artworks to show you by Verrocchio, which is One is a painting and one is a statue, which have some similarity. This painting is in the Uffizi Gallery. It's by Verrocchio and its pupils. While this statue here is the St. Thomas, which is checking the wound of Christ with a finger, and is in bronze, because also in the workshop of Verrocchio, there was not just making paintings or frescoes. They were also very advanced in the technology of working bronze, which was a relatively recent, let's say, rediscovery. The Romans made a lot of bronze statues, but then during the Middle Ages, the technology to cast bronze statues this big was lost. Only starting from the 1200s, they started to make bronze statues again, but they were quite small and not many details. So doing something like this was really a technological advance. So Leonardo was born in 1452. So in the 1460s and beginning of the 70s, he was in Florence, working in Florence. He had, of course, a reputation because he was the son of a notary and was a very talented man. I showed you before the place where he was born, because he must have had a very happy childhood. This is this is a theory that one of the art historians that recently studied Leonardo under new lights, Antonio Forcellino, which is also an expert in making restoration of artworks. He's made restoration of the Moses, he's made restoration of Raphael frescoes, so he knows also the technical aspects of art. He also focuses his attention on two aspects. The first one is that Leonardo was really in touch with the natural environment. So as a kid, he must have looked and he must have experienced firsthand natural life, animals, plants. So this is also is interested for nature. On the other hand, he was uneducated. The grandfather taught him to write. That's one of the reasons probably he writes upside down, or maybe he was afraid of being spied. That's why it was his way to create a secret language by mirroring. So he wrote from left to right using the left hand, although he could write with both hands, two different things at the same time. So he was really skilled in that. You can try it at home to try two different sentences at the same time with two different hands. It's almost impossible, but practice makes it perfect. And the second aspect is that when I entered the lab of Verrocchio in their workshop, they were also making colors. You couldn't buy colors ready-made back then. You couldn't buy brushes. The artists had to build them, make them in their own workshop. So they had to know, for example, which hair or which animal were adapt for a certain detail. So they use a different type of animals. They need to know if it was the male of that kind of rat that made it the best brushes for that particular thing, or if they used the horse's hair or whatever type of hair they use. Mostly different animals have different thickness of the hair. And also the colors were basically pigment, which was either a stone or a mineral, grounded and then mixed with egg whites. And sometimes they use other bases. Only later on, by the beginning of 1500, they started to use oil, but at that time it was still tempera. And then here you have the pretty classical figure of Christ with a lot of details in the curls, in the beard, also in the way the outfits falls down. And of course, technically, they were really advanced in working in bronze. Verrocchio had the best bronze manufacturer, was the best bronze worker, bronze artist by the second half of 1400 in Florence. He was the one who cast the bowl, which is at the top of the Duomo of Florence. Let's go to Florence. Florence Duomo, which was built over a time of nearly 200 years. So this is the Florence Duomo, and there is a bronze bowl at the top. Let me see if we can see it maybe from here. I like this thing that you can drop and see pictures. You see that thing here. This is 7 meters. I think it's 6 meters, 5 meters wide, so it's pretty big. And so that was a big technical achievement by that time, as it was the dome made by Brunelleschi, and then Florence full of tourists. But anyway, as soon as they open up again, everything, you should go to Florence for a long weekend. I can give you all the tips that you could do in Florence.
Actually, it's one of the destinations where we
And
want to go.
yeah, and then there's the, of course, Giotto's bell tower, the facade. The facade was actually made only in the 19th century, yeah, because it was unfinished. The Medici had it painted, but the frescoes just fell, and then only around 1860 it was completed with this kind of neo-Gothical, like a revival style, like the London Gothic, like London's House of Parliament, that kind of style.
Yeah.
With the revival of Gothic style. Anyway, so the first work that we know Leonardo did in the workshop of the one that we are sure of, it's this christening of Jesus Christ, the baptism of Christ. So you have Christ in the center, the God represented just by the hands, and the Holy Ghost represented by the dove. You know, as a friend of mine who's a priest explained to me once who's the Holy Ghost and what it does. Sandro, who is the Holy Ghost and what it does?
Maria is the expert.
You also a member of the
Yeah.
are you not a knight of
Yeah, only tonight.
Anyway, my friend says the Holy Ghost is the one that does all the little dirty jobs that neither the Father or the Son want to do. So, so if there's something they don't want to do, they just do what I do. No, I'm kidding. So you can see it's a pretty classical pose. Again, there is this attention for the new, the details, starting from the beginning of 1400s, around 1420s, 1430s. Platonism started to be, studied in Florence. Plato's artworks. The idea that beauty and also nudity was something that gets us close to God, and so nude started to be represented with, aesthetically more beautifully, and also. After 1450, with the establishment of the Accademia, the Accademia of Plato, basically in Florence, so the Platonic Academy in the Villa of Careggi, one of the Medici villas. Of course, all these ideas of, ideal beauty as the main way to access God and divinity, it was basically all part of this. So that's why we have this big attention for the beauty of art, compared, for example, to the Middle Age or the Byzantine style art. Leonardo worked here probably in this angel on the left. In fact, if you compare the face of the angel, the curly hair, to other details, you can see there's a lot more attention, a lot more detail. Leonardo was obsessed with achieving perfection and details, and this has a lot to do with his starts in life, because he was never acknowledged as a legitimate son. He was also considered like illegitimate, so a bastard, we would say. He also had this feeling of not being worth it, not being, good enough for his father and for his family and for his status, for what he should be. And so he always worked very hard. Actually, he didn't want to become a painter. He became a painter, was very successful as a painter, but he considered himself more of a scientist, an inventor. He wanted to write books. He wanted to publish all the notes, all the sketches that we have, although he was never able, because every time he was about to complete something, he felt he missed something. So he started reading more. By that time, he didn't speak Latin, or probably only just barely. And anyway, he didn't go to a formal school. The only thing that was educated was through his grandfather, which explains also another thing. One thing was very, very rare and very expensive at the time, and there was plenty of it in a notary's house. Try to guess what it is. Notary that makes, contracts and
Ink.
ink. Very well. And what you use ink on? Paper. Yeah. Did you say paper?
I said paper, yeah.
Yeah, paper was extremely expensive because back then it was made with old rags, and the process was very, very, complex and costly. Not many people had access to paper. It was very expensive, and of course, the notary, he had lots of paper because that's what they use mostly. At that time, books were still written on lamb skins or other animal skins. Massive, industrial paper only came much later. So we have here the detail of the angel. You could see these pearls here, and then also the attention to the realism of the basically of the draping here of the outfits. If you compare it to the other drapings, which are, yes, are very beautiful, but there's not that attention, that detail, that precision, especially in how the light and the shading on the different draping. So he started that process that led him to be one of the greatest mind ever, through his curiosity, but also to his artwork about inquiring about nature. He probably also did this part of the background, which has a couple of elements that you can find in other Leonardo's paintings, these spiky rocks, and also this kind of trees and the misty kind of background in the distance where it's kind of out of focus. And he was one of the first artists who discovered that the background and the distance, it doesn't look as focused, and there's a consistency of the air. So he really studied how we perceive nature. Now this is the Uffizi. In Uffizi there's also another great artwork, which is the Annunciation that I have. Where is it? Annunciation. Maledetto. Allora, questa però. It's here. So by the time he made this, he was 20 years old, and he started already to revolutionize the idea of the Annunciation. Annunciation, the classical Annunciations. Let me see if I can show you one from another painter. For example, Botticelli. You could see that the Annunciations, they are all indoors. Let me pull it up. I've got thousands of paintings. I don't prepare them beforehand because I want just to go with the flow. Also, if you have questions, so I think it feels fresher if I just, go with the flow instead of having a set of for example, this one here. You see, it's the Virgin Mary. She's generally inside or indoors or protected or in a portico. For example, we have, there was another one though I was thinking. No, it's not here. So basically, Leonardo set it outdoors, completely outdoors. You could see the bedroom to the right, which is where tradition the Virgin Mary was set in most of the other Annunciation. And then you could see she's been interrupted. She's got a beautiful face with beautiful details, and she's just been interrupted. She's got one hand on the book and the other one like this, like you just stopped me. And the angel looks like it's just landed, and you can feel the weight of its clothes, the draping as well here. That's great attention to it. And then every detail, the fleur-de-lis, the wings are actually real bird wings. It's not just something, idealized. And then we have a beautiful landscape against with these rocks, with the beautiful trees, typical of the cypresses, and the other trees typical of the Tuscan landscape. And then we have this landscape that has a city and boats and pillars and who knows what. So it's basically, again, an idea of a real landscape, but as well has got a lot of suggestion. One of the key elements of Leonardo's painting is the landscape, that is never just a filling of a background. It is part of a painting as one other subject. So the natural words, the natural aspects, they always have a very important role in Leonardo's. If I showed you, for example, Cappella Sistina, the Quattrocentisti, which are here. So for example, Botticelli here. You can see that here the landscape is just the place where to put the different scenes. In itself, he has no function. It's just like a set, like a just a background. Although the trees, they have some allegories and typologies, and also the architecture. But it's basically just part of the scenery. There is another one where we have the this is the punishment. This is again Botticelli, where we have the boat, we have the city, but you could see that the background is pretty bare. There's not that level of attention or details of realism that we will find in Leonardo. Though this is beautiful. These both frescoes are for the Sistine Chapel, and they're made in the similar sense a little later, about 10 years after the Annunciation. And of course, Leonardo, Botticelli, Michelangelo, they all knew each other. So, and also there is this beautiful marble bas relief with a shell. And then, of course, this is like after many Roman artifacts that were available in Florence, because the Medici were great collectors of them. Leonardo quite quickly became a very important artist, making portraits. This is the Uffizi again, making portraits and making a number of private portraits. And this is much later. How do I get? But by the middle 1400s, he had another idea. He didn't want to work much in Florence. He made a few other portraits. The first portrait he made is this one here. Let me show. So Ginevra dei Benci. We are just a couple of years after the Annunciation, and she's got quite a straight face looking at us, and the portrait is made 3/4, which is quite canonical at that time, but the background is extremely modern and beautiful, with these trees reflecting, and then with the shades of the background down here. You look at it like an impressionist. It's so vivid, so modern. And as well, the detail of, for example, the curves of the hair. Look, each one of this, it's one little stripe hand painted by him. We've lost probably part of the hat, part of the decoration. In the background there is the juniper. So basically Ginevra juniper, it's kind of an element that takes the, I don't see the back part here. No, it's here. So the same painting has at the back the laurel, the palm, and the juniper. The juniper is in the center. So the same painting is painted on both sides. So it was probably also a present or something like to be transported as well, rather than just to be hanged. And it's got this virtutem forma decorat. So the virtue make the aspect better. Or decorates it in the sense that she's so beautiful because she's a virtuous woman. So virtue in the sense that she was, a woman of faith, full of qualities, is the Roman idea of, if you have good qualities, you also look good. If you're ugly, you're also bad. And we have the laurel and the palm, which are Roman symbols of, triumph and celebration, and the juniper, which is based on their name, which in fact is on the center. Anyway, he wanted to do something different. So he asked Lorenzo il Magnifico, of whom I must have a picture here. Where is Lorenzo? Maybe it's here. No, this is Giuliano. Lorenzo il Magnifico, here it is. So, which at the time was the Lord of Florence, to get a letter of invitation to go to Milan and work for Ludovico il Moro. At the time, Milan was in a political turmoil, but there was a lot of it was one of the economical centers in northern Italy, together with Venice. And also there were a lot of artists, there were a lot of things being built. The Duomo was still under construction, and there were a lot of merchants. There was a lot of to do also in engineering and constructions as well. They were redoing the systems of irrigation. So he wanted to offer his help into that aspect too. So Lorenzo Magnifico wrote a letter, and Leonardo prepared a sort of CV, a sort of curriculum, in which he described himself first as an engineer, a surveyor of landscapes, a geographer, an inventor. He could create mechanical things. He can invent a number of other solutions, like, of course, irrigation systems. He can build weapons and guns and armors. He lists at least 10 or 12 things. And the last one is Also, by the way, I'm a good painter. and of this tells us a lot of what was his main aim also as a painter. So this is probably one of the earliest landscapes he drew, and we know that it's a Tuscany landscape. And basically the way he draws, he's more interested in learning the proportions, in learning the details, rather than create a nice image. In fact, it's also quite difficult to look at because there's too much. He wanted to know the structure of the reality to be able to replicate that. Anyway, Leonardo made a huge mistake when he went to Milan, because amongst other things that he did, and many beautiful things, he wanted to make a statue like this. This is Donatello in Padua. That's the statue of Gattamelata, the captain of the people of Padua, made by Donatello in the 1400s. The very first modern statue of a man on a horse, based on, of course, the ones that are in Rome, like the Marco Aurelio and the statue of leaders and emperors of horses. The technology of making this was just invented then, because they've lost it from the Roman times, as I said, because this had to be cast with one big mold and then moved around in order to let all the air bubbles out. Leonardo planned to build something much bigger, a monument to Francesco Sforza, and
These were in the exhibition in London, right?
This is the this is so we have in total about 1,700 drawings by Leonardo. In Buckingham Palace, the collection has about 300. On the exhibition, I think there were 100 something. I haven't written which ones they came, but most of these they are from there, because they've always been very available. I've got a couple of books. I've got also this one here. This is like 15 kilos of Leonardo, and this is all the drawings, and many of them, of the best one, are from there. And of course, then there are the codes, of which 3 are in Italy. Anyway, this one is I haven't written it down, but I'm pretty sure this is from the exhibition. There were a few about the horse actually there. He didn't know how to do it, because the problem with the bronze statue is the weight, balancing the weight, and at that time they didn't have the technology to figure that out. So Leonardo has 2 problems. First one, the balance, the statue, and which figure to make, which should have been probably similar to this, with just one leg up. Although in the picture I show you Gattamelata, Donatello has the little bronze ball, because otherwise it would have fell on the side, because it's heavier on this side. You need to balance it in a way that by 100 years later they were able to make even statue horses only of 2 feet, even though they need to be reinforced and well balanced. Anyway, his idea was to make a horse like 6-7 meters tall. So he had 2 problems. First one. Dimmi.
Do you remember correctly that the position of the horse legs were a symbolism of the life of the person?
So this came I think in the French or in American statues later on. If it died in battle, is 1 legs up. If it died at home, like 4 legs down. But it's something that came much later, I think by the 16th or 17th century in France. I think it doesn't apply to Roman or Italian statues. 1 leg up died in battle, and the legs down. I'm not sure if it's based on the Roman one, because we don't have enough for them. We have
legs up.
Well, legs up, like with the back down, and the 4 legs up is definitely that. Anyway, no, this is the thing that everybody asks all the time. So the main thing was, first, the position. Second, how to cast such a bronze statue. So he created this mold, which was giant, and he created a model for the wax model, which I don't see here, for the wax casting. Is it here? No, it's not here. This is the one before, with a number of machines and pulleys and things. There was another one. Maybe I should just view view large, extra large. He had, let me see. There is one that he created right for the no, I can't see it here, but I had it. This, by the way, here we have the measurements, the sides, all the proportions. He put a lot of effort in it, and he believed he could make it. But he cast it. He failed a couple of times, and then eventually the bronze that was originally purchased for that reason was sold or reused to make cannons for one of the wars that they were fighting at that time. Anyway, by the end of the 1400s, the horse wasn't made. But in this case, you see, this is based on the drawings that had 2 feet up, but probably the model he made didn't have 2 feet up. It must have only one. This is a bronze which is now in Milan, which was made about 20 years ago by an American billionaire, raised money and made Leonardo's horse. There's one in Milan and I think 1 or 2 in America of the original size that Leonardo originally wanted. So eventually it got made. Leonardo was very humiliated, so he went back to Florence, and in Florence he started doing other jobs. Oh, this is it. Sorry, I didn't find. This is how he planned to create the detail of like the cage to actually do the cast of the bronze. The cast was made like this. There was the model of the horse with the hollow space inside, and then with the wax that would have come out, and the outside part of the mold was divided into several parts which were kept together by this system, so they could move it and they could rotate it, but it failed in the end. So he went back to Florence. He took a number of jobs and commissions, including many unfinished, and by then he had a kind of a name of somebody who didn't finish his job. At the same time, he has started his study of the anatomical his anatomical studies on human beings, and also studies on the flights of the birds. So basically, he became very, very busy. His main thing was to create books, to write something like Leon Battista Alberti, like his contemporaries who wrote essays on the architecture, on the light. For example, Piero della Francesca's essay on the perspective, how to paint with perspective, the study on light. This is the San Jerome, which is in Rome in the Vatican. And this is a very troubled history, because basically this wasn't finished. And the head was cut off the rest. You could still see the marks here. And was reframed or part of a bigger furniture or something. And the main wooden panel was turned like in a door or of a furniture or something. Only in the 1700s, a female painter called Angelica Kaufmann, she also made a beautiful portrait of the King of Naples, which is in Naples. She found out that this was Leonardo and put them back together, and now is in the collection of the Vatican. Although it's unfinished, we can see San Jerome's details made in a great detail, like the neck, the muscles, the veins, the wrinkles on the face. So he really put a lot of effort in the anatomical precision. And again, because for Leonardo, to paint something, you need to know the nature of things deeply. And so he did also many studies on the anatomy on a number of years, although at some point he must have not had access anymore to corpses, which was illegal then. It was considered, of course, sacrilegious. How do you say profanation of a corpse, which is still in Italy or many other countries is still illegal, unless the bodies are donated or there's a court order. You can't really dissect people to study them. And so he started to draw and design. One thing that always makes me think is that he always wanted to become famous for his anatomical studies. There are some more here I can show you. His anatomical studies or other things. So this is the brain, the cavity inside, the hollow skull with the marks of the brain. And then we have the legs. Let me see. Legs here with the muscles and everything. And then here, this is What animal do you think it is? Then this animal doesn't exist anymore in England, but it does exist in Italy and I believe also in Ukraine. I'm pretty sure.
Wolf?
Close, bigger.
Horse?
No,
Sorry,
no.
the
Bear.
bear.
Bear. Yes, it's a barefoot. Also, do you have bears in Ukraine?
We do, we do.
Do you eat them?
No, not really.
No.
No.
No, in Abruzzo they eat them. They make arrosticini with bear. They're very nice. So no, they make with the sheep. But I'm pretty sure they eat the bear too.
In
So
Siberia, they make this dumplings with bear meat. It's bear meat.
you see, dumplings with bear meat. Yeah, yeah.
They're very considered very like.
But fried or boiled.
But it's boiled. You
Okay.
them inside and then you boil and you with soak cream with the butter. You serve them.
So more on the anatomy here. You have he just went through different layers, the skin. This, of course, is a portrait of someone that was, a dead person, or it looks a lot like Dante as well. But of course, this is part of the anatomical studies. We have he also expanded, as we saw, to the animal world. And I have, before going to the flight of birds, I have two more things I want to show you. The cats, for example, here. And we also have notes, and we have his diaries, and also a number of poems he wrote. He wrote a few sonnets. It was pretty common. Now, we all only know, for example, Michelangelo's sonnets, because they're quite interesting for whatever his mentality was, his personal struggles. But also Leonardo wrote sonnets. Even Raphael wrote 6 or 7 sonnets that we have preserved. So, it was like a pastime, like our friend Gabriela Barbosa that writes terrible poetry. But it was like a pastime, everybody wrote sonnets. So, and in one of his notes, there is an entire description of the animal world, to which he gives to every animal a moral attribute. So the ermite, the woman with the ermite, the famous portrait that he made. Where is it? No, it's not this one. This one is La Belle Ferronnière, but it's quite similar. Where is it? Oh no, maybe I got it here. The Lady with the Ermite. There it is, which is yeah. It's very, very beautiful. And of course, it's quite a canonical kind of painting, but at the same time, you could see the hand, the three-dimensional detail of the hand. It's really impressive, as well as the animal. The expression of the woman is so lively. So it's the amount of detail. Really, Leonardo showed the world how to make a portrait in a way that was really represented the soul of the person, at the same time incredibly realistically well done. In this case, the ermite is an allegory, because we know also from his diaries that they believed back then that the ermite doesn't go in the mud, in the holes in the grounds like rabbits and other rodents to escape from predators, because he doesn't want to make dirt his fur. He rather dyes, immaculates, that to stain his fur. And so it was a symbol of purity and immaculation, and so it was used for this way. So that's why it's the portrait here is the same. Anyway, the Leonardo, before leaving Milan, made a large fresco, which is still preserved, not extremely well, the Last Supper. Which have you been to Milan?
Yeah, I've been. I've seen this Last Supper. It's amazing.
So here I got one. No, this is. Let me see. I got a big picture, like a. Yeah, this one is. So you know about the Last Supper more or less.
Yeah.
Okay, so just quickly, I'll just point a couple of elements. First of all, it's not very well preserved. The original one would have looked like more like this one here, which is, where do I have it? here it is. This is a copy made in late 1500s. You see the colors would have been a lot more brighter. The tapestry on the wall, and then you know, the amount of details, the amount of color, you know, would have been a lot more. Anyway, it was also bombed during World War II.
Yeah, actually, the monks saved it.
Yeah.
They put like
So
effects of.
this is the Church of Santa Maria Grazie. This fresco here is on the opposite wall.
Yeah.
And so the refectory was bombed. It was only preserved because they put sand sachets just in front of it.
Sand,
So,
like
to
upwards.
protect. Yeah. Anyway, the Last Supper again, he found this kind of way to create an you know, a reaction, a different reaction for every disciple, and to create an element which is characteristic to each one of them. For example, here we have St. Thomas with the finger up, because of course he's the one that doesn't believe that Christ is resurrected afterwards, and will put like the finger in the wound. The table always make me think that you could see, of course, the wine, and then here there is fish and wine and bread, because of course the fish and the bread is related with the miracle of multiplicating them, the bread, the wine again with the Eucharist. And then you could see St. Peter here next to St. John, which is the one that for many, you know, unorthodox interpretation is considered Mary Magdalene, but of course is not. And actually St. John has a very peculiar position, because he's got the fingers like this, which is a way of keeping the hands that is also very expressive in some statues that we have, I Sacri which are representation of the Passion of Christ, built around the same years, between the second half of 1400s and 1500s, in the mountains around Milan. And also, for example, inspired Caravaggio. And so there's also this idea to physically represent the torment, the pain. And then we have Peter that has the knife, because of course he's the one who chops up the ear of the servant of the temple, and then Christ put it back and says, yes, you are, this is not what we do, and gives a strong message to Peter of, you know, first of not being violent, the second that Christianism is the fulfillment of Judaism, is not another religion as then it became. And then we have Judas, which is of course darker in skin, because as in Shakespeare, the black guy is always the bad guy, or in the American movies, if there's a criminal, it's always the bad guy. If you blame the black guy, then it's okay. With a pointy beard, you know, it looks very Middle Eastern, you know, very Moresque. At that time, of course, there was a lot of trade, but also wars with the Moors and with the Turks, you know, so with the Eastern Europe, with the Middle East. And then Judas is the one that is lower than everybody else. Everybody is more or less the same height to Jesus, and Judas is a little lower, and also he's got his elbow on the table, which was considered quite rude, still is, and so he's got, and the hand open like that, like he's grabbing something, and the other one he's got the bag of coins. So there is a very important psychological characterization. While other disciples, the ones that have the hands here, the ones that have the hand there, everybody's got a different reaction. And this variety and the fact that he groups it in groups of three, 4 groups of 3, is also tells us a lot about the idea that I want to give order, but also livelihood to this beautiful image. And he probably also used pigments that were not going to last very much. This is a little bad picture, but doesn't have the same resolution. Anyway, in Florence, he's given a big commission of painting one of the walls of the Palazzo Vecchio, the Palace of the Government, which is Palazzo Vecchio. It's this one here in Piazza della Signoria. So basically, the center of Florence, it's a Roman city. It's based on a Roman city. By the Piazza della Repubblica was the Forum, and then so this was the center. And then the Via dei Calzaioli and the other streets here, you see this grid shape. It's still the reflect of the Roman plans, like also the ancient center of Naples. So it's the Roman city as well, although the Florentines don't like being called, heirs of the Roman city. but they are like everybody else. No, this is nighttime. I don't like nighttime. Let's go on a daytime. Some of these pictures are taken at nighttime, some are daytime. And this is the Palazzo Vecchio. So in here, in the Salone del Cinquecento, there are big walls that by the end of the 1400s, they should have been frescoed by Michelangelo, one, La Battaglia di Cascina, and the other one by Leonardo da Vinci, La Battaglia di Anghiari. Leonardo tried the technique of the encausto, where he wanted to this is night again, when he wanted to, oh, here we are with the Regeni thing here. He wanted to use the ancient Roman technique, where the Romans used a type of color that was fixed using heat, using fire. He tried that, he failed, and then he melted and he never finished the job. At the same time, he was doing other jobs as well. One was this one, the Adoration of the Magi, that is more or less inspired after the one by Botticelli, where we have the Adoration right in the center rather than on the sides, which is quite an innovative way. And unfortunately, it was left unfinished. Oh, maybe I will go on Google Arts here. Was left unfinished, and it's here. It's been restored for about 5 years, and then you could see the beautiful landscape at the background with the this kind of new building, unfinished building, or probably a ruin, symbolizing the fact that the Christianism would have been built on the ruins of the pagan religion. Horses and fighters, the Virgin Mary with the child, and the Magi kings here, these three bearing the gifts to the child. This as well was left unfinished, you could see, and now is as well in the Uffizi Gallery. Anyway, he intensified his studies on architecture by designing a number of ideal buildings that he designed just for his own research. They were not meant to be for someone or for something. He invented this idea of the tunnels, the underground connection system of cities that use canals, and then walkways for pedestrians, with lodges for pedestrians and underground passages for goods, as well as a number of machines and military machines as well. These are all a number of pumps and other systems, and the same principle of the spiral was used to design reductions of gears here, was also used to create a number of chains in which he designed every minimal detail, and then also military designs like this one. This is a system to get the stairs, the ladders off the walls in the case of a military attack. In the 1400s, they were still climbing with the stairs. Like by the 1500s, they used mostly cannons, and this is like a serial cannons that can shoot 10, 15, 20 shots a time, and so on. Let's go back a little bit. He also made a number of caricatures. For example, this is Dante Alighieri, which of course was very, very famous in Florence. They use it like a topic of conversation. And also there's the ugly woman there. Where is she? She is here. The ugly woman.
On the right.
Here she is. Also a caricature, although there's also this is probably after a Flemish painting. Leonardo left us also a number of personal notes of historical elements. So shortly before going away from Florence, probably one of the reasons why he left Florence, he witnessed the execution of this man, Bernardo di Bandino Baroncelli. He was one of the men who made the conspiracy of the Pazzi in Florence in 1476, and he escaped. The Medici wanted to execute everybody that took part of this conspiracy against them, so he was arrested a year later in in Constantinople and took back to Florence. And at the end of 1478, he was hanged on the Palazzo Vecchio, so everybody could see that the Medici would not stop their revenge against their enemies. Anyway, Leonardo then starts traveling in central Italy, goes back to Milan, but it's kind of a period where he's not settled really. He goes back and forth from Florence to Bologna to other parts. He goes ahead with his studies, for example, anatomical studies, but in this case, he couldn't access a human body. So this uterus is basically an animal one, probably a cow or a sheep. So it doesn't correspond to the human anatomy. So he must have wanted to complete his sketches for his book he was planning, and he didn't have access to that. So he used, by similarity, he must have understood that living beings, living creatures, mammals, they had certain functions and certain organs that work more or less in the same way, which is also very very advanced thought. And so he was adding that as well to his studies. But the most famous of all these anatomical studies, which is actually not an anatomical study, is based on the works by Vitruvius, is the Vitruvian Man, where Vitruvius describes the proportions of the Greek art, the proportion of the body, how the ideal body is measured by fitting each part of it so many times in the rest of the body. And he describes the man into a circle and a square. And it's really a quintessential Renaissance vision of the position of the world of the human beings in the universe, compared to, for example, the Middle Ages, where God was central and human beings were just like humble servants of God, and their role in history was minimal. In the Renaissance, the human being is at the center of the universe, at the center of creation. God creates the human being as it is image to enjoy and to use the world for his own satisfaction, basically. And so everything that comes from nature and from God is good, and so there should be a use of it through knowledge. That also is a maths and geometry, which are also tools that God put at disposal of Christ. It's the same principle that later on was applied by Galileo Galilei, for example, to the study of nature of world, which was a very religious man. And so Leonardo, by fitting the Vitruvian Man into the circle and square, it creates an epitome, like a symbol of what the Renaissance is. And that's why this single drawing is so famous, so important, even though this is not even accessible to public, because this is in the library of the Academy of Venice. It's a museum in Venice about Venetian art, and because it's on paper, it's not always on display. So I've seen it twice now, because I saw it in Venice about 10 years ago for exhibition, and now I saw it last December to Paris. You didn't come to Paris?
We do know.
Perché no?
It was a wrong period. We couldn't come.
Oh, sorry. Well, we won't be traveling for a while now, so. No, but the exhibition was really, really good. And of course, this one was there. And my French colleague who hosted us there and gave us a tour and everything asked me, why is this so important? Well, no, because they have 5 paintings there in the Louvre, and they don't see why just a simple drawing might be so important. Anyway, so Leonardo came down to Rome, and in Rome he lived in the Vatican for about 3 years, in a little closet, a room which was maybe it's 3-4 meters by 3-4 meters, so very small. And for at that time he was already in nearly 60 or in the early 60s, so he was already considered a great artist, a genius, an engineer. He was revered by Raphael, not so much Michelangelo. Michelangelo probably hated him, and we know that in 1503, 1502, after he fell the Milan horse, Michelangelo was really young, wasn't even 30. And so he knew the master. Leonardo was about 20 years older than the Michelangelo was already very well known and appreciated. And he also dressed up very nicely. Leonardo also had very bright and nice dresses, a very nice hair. For example, in the self-portrait, this was done when he was already in his 60s. But you could see the old man with this beautiful white fluffy beard. He must have had very long hair. Everybody describes in a very, always with a nice perfume, very nice dressed, very kind to everybody, very gentleman. He was probably even a little bit effeminate. And Michelangelo, they were once like in Florence, in one of those social occasions where they were discussing about Dante's poetry, and then Leonardo saw Michelangelo, and of course, as an older man, asked Michelangelo his opinion about Dante, saying, "I think this. What do you think?" And in front of other people, so the witnesses of this, he said, "What can you know about?" So Michelangelo said to Leonardo, "What can you know about all this? You just try to fool the Milanese. You made them think that you could build a horse. You took the money and then you didn't make the horse. So you're just like an imposter. You should just be ashamed of yourself." And such a bitter and aggressive response from someone so young really shocked everybody, including Leonardo. But anyway, the year later, or a couple of years later, there was the vote. Many artists were asked where to place Michelangelo's David. Do you know Michelangelo's David? Michelangelo's David? Pronto? This one, which is now in front of the Palazzo della Signoria, in Piazza della Signoria, in front of Palazzo Vecchio. It's a 5 meters tall statue, beautiful, the very first, one of the very first great achievements of Michelangelo after La Pietà. And so a number of artists, including Botticelli, Leonardo, and a few others, were asked to vote where to place this statue, which originally was made for the Duomo. Of course, David was related with the Bible. And they said the Duomo up on the top, on the tribuna, so nobody would have seen it from there. So they said, this is too beautiful, we should put it somewhere else. And then they voted to put it in the most important places, in the most important place in Palazzo della Signoria here. So just by the entrance of this was the palace of the government, and still is the palace of the Florentine government. So he must have not taken it personally. And why Michelangelo was so angry and so upset with Leonardo? They didn't have really much rivalry, although, every artist more or less was a rival of each other. Why do you think there was such a bitterness, such an aggressiveness? Pronto? Domanda?
Yes. Was envious.
We don't really know, but for example, Forcellino, which I think is quite interesting, the professor Forcellino, he thinks that Leonardo was a very happy gay man with a number of pupils. He shared a kind of a commune. In fact, one of his preferred pupils was this guy Francesco Melzi, which became also his heir. Very, very handsome young man, and he had many of these pupils. There's also a court proceeding against him for being with a male prostitute, but the accusers were dropped, so they didn't go ahead. So we think it was probably, while Michelangelo, he didn't live his homosexuality very well. I think he felt guilty, and he had a lot of resentment for that. So basically, he probably was envious or had a personal bitterness or personal attack. He didn't appreciate his lifestyle or his persona, because the attack is really, really personal and very bitter. Plus, Michelangelo was generally a horrible man. Did you see this painting here? Have you seen this painting in the National Gallery?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I already talked about this. There are two versions, and it's not very common to have two versions of the same painting. But so this is the one in the National Gallery, and there's another one here in the Louvre, which is probably okay. We have both of them here. So you can see it's exactly the same, but there's a very different approach to the coloring, to the finishing. This one on the right, it's more lively. You could see the eyes of the angels.
Yeah.
And then you could see the child, the proportion, the nose, these details here. And then look at the rocks. The rocks, they have some different details here. Well, they're similar, but there is some different coloring, different shading, different part. Anyway, most art historians believe that they're both Leonardo's, but made in different occasions, and especially the one on the left must have been finished by pupils rather than by Leonardo himself. So the one on the right is probably the Leonardo complete one. Look also the details of the plans here. There's a lot more, much more accuracy. But for example, the rock parts, some of them, like this part here, these are not geologically correct. These ones here, the ones that look like little spikes emerging, they're called calanchi. You can find them. They're natural tufa canyons, basically, canyon-like formations that are between Rome and Tuscany in near Viterbo. Do you know Viterbo, Alessandro?
Of course.
Viterbese, Latouche. They are called calanchi, like Civita di Bagnoregio is one of those. So, and they can be also thin, and so it's quite a realistic one. But the way the rocks are depicted, this one up here, they're not natural formation, like that they grow that vertically and horizontally. You don't find a formation like this. So there are some elements. Probably this part was entirely painted by the pupils. So. We don't really know much of the details, but anyway, it's not very common to have several versions of where Leonardo worked. Although copies of paintings are very common, we have sometimes 10, 15, 20 copies of the similar paintings. Now, Leonardo made probably 20 or probably even less than 20 paintings in total. Many of them we know through copies. Is the case, for example, the Leda, which we know he made one Leda, but this is a copy. There are several versions. This, for example, the copy. There's one in the Galea Borghese in Rome, for example. But there are some elements that are elements of Leonardo: the face, the style of the face, the mouth, the eyes, the body, the chiaroscuro on the body, and then the rocks and the landscape there. These were very influential in the art in northern Italy, Milan, and also in France for at least a century. So he gave the start to an entire school of basically of art. Now he let me see, I want to show you something else now. I don't find it. So then why he went to France? What was the reason for him to go to France? Pronto? You said you studied.
No, not so much.
No,
This is one of the early come si dice garofano in inglese? Maybe it says here. No. What did you say garofano in inglese? The
Garofalo.
So it's this Madonna with the red flower here. This is one of the early Madonnas of Leonardo.
Carnation.
Carnation, yeah, the Madonna of the Carnation. Where we have still a very a style which is very similar to the early 1400 masters. So, for example, I want to, of course, Botticelli, Ghirlandaio, but above all, Verrocchio, that was the word, which was his master. So a lot of details, quite a rigid position, although the baby is trying to move, an indoor side. But again, we have the attention for the flowers. Look at the level of details of the flowers here. And then also the lighting and the gold in all the little aspects of the draping, and of course the jewel here, and then this beautiful landscape outside. In this case, she's inside, and we could see the landscape in these mountains, probably the mountains that you could see from the coast of Tuscany, the Alpi Apuane, and then later on, of course, from Lombardy. You must have seen the Alps as well. But I'm pulling it up now because I would like to go through some of the Madonnas and how they led then to the idea of the evolution of the. This is the Madonna of the Yarn, where we have the a lot much freer image. So the Madonna now is outdoors, and the landscape goes up all the way to the top of behind her. Landscapes usually only ended up at the bottom
Yeah.
of the back. They didn't go all the way up this way. In this case, the Virgin Mary is immersed in nature because she's coming to save the world. And then again, there is a path, a river, a bridge. There's certain elements, there's spiky rocks, certain elements of a landscape, which is also an element, like a character of the painting, that we will find as well in the Mona Lisa. And of course, the beauty of the Virgin Mary, the livelihood, with the hand like this, and the child contemplating the cross, of course, is destiny. Now, Leonardo, you haven't answered yet about the fact why Leonardo went to France.
Just to have quiet time for his, study. It's like retirement.
Well, the reason is he was on the paycheck, on the paybook of the King of France, Louis the No, I can't hear you now.
He didn't have to do anything, right? I mean,
No. He was employed. Basically, after being in Rome, he wasn't able to get any job that he found interesting, or he found he believed that the Pope even had spies on him. The Pope was Leo X, so was the son of Lorenzo Magnifico, Giovanni de' Medici. So he basically knew Leonardo very well since childhood, but yet he couldn't do his work. He wanted to complete his studies. He wanted to publish them. He wanted them to have an influence and to make a difference. He was always unhappy with the results of the things he has made. So since the time he was in Milan, for several years, he had a regular wage, so a monthly check from the King of France, Louis XII. When Louis XII died, Francis I as well was very, very fond of Leonardo and invited him for several times. So it was the King of France friendship that invited him there. He didn't probably wanted to go there, but it's partially true that he could find a sort of retirement there, because also his health was depleting. He wasn't healthy anymore, and the experience of Rome must have had a very negative effect on him. He couldn't study and freely. He had two assistants that the Pope paid. They were probably two Swiss guys that were spying on him and reporting to the Pope. So he wasn't happy at all. And then he left after 2.5 years. And he went here, La Closse, which is in France. He was Amboise was like a kind of a French court outside of Paris. It's about 200, 300 kilometers from Paris. Let me see. It's up here. Oh, we've gone too far. I might just Google it. Boys. No, it's here. I do an exercise. When I look something on a map, I try to find it without the search. It's a good way to. It's here. Chateau eccolo qua. So it's quite far from Paris. You see, it's Pas Orléans. So yeah, it would be like a good 2 hours, 3 hours drive, probably 2-3 hours. Do you go to France? Have you been to France?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love driving through France, although the French are terrible drivers.
Because you usually drive from London, right? From Manchester to Rome.
See, I cross at the Folkestone, Calais, and then I drive all the way down to. I avoid Switzerland because they stop and check you. So I did it once and never do it again. Because I had a lot of wine, and they said, "What's this wine for?" It's personal use. I said, "There's no such thing as personal use. If you carry goods, you carry goods. It doesn't matter if you declare that for personal goods." I said, "Well, it's true. You want me to drink it now?" So this is the castle. The castle is actually a 3D visit, so you can actually go inside and visit the different rooms. It's all been basically redecorated because it was then half abandoned, and his tomb was even destroyed and then rebuilt later in the Cathedral of Amboise. So, and we can find two paintings here of the three that he brought with him. This is the St. John, the Baptist, and this is the famous Mona Lisa, which is a painting that he probably started much, much earlier. This is the place where probably he died, his bedroom. And according to the description of the contemporaries, the king, Francois I, when he died, he went there and he cried, and he actually, the last breath was when the king was holding the old Leonardo. Anyway, so he lived very comfortably. He had a big house and he had everything he needed, although by then he wasn't able to paint anymore. He wasn't able to work very well, and actually his last works are very, very troubled, and I think they were also in the exhibition. I think so. Yes, this definitely is. You
Yes.
saw this one, yeah.
Yes.
So they are the deluge. This is like a geyser or an earthquake. You know, where the rocks coming out, and then the rain and the waters. They're all this very dramatic scenes of the world going to an end. So you can imagine, as Leonardo was aging, it was 65, no, 66, 67 by then. He was going towards the end. He couldn't see very well. His hands were not stable very well, so he couldn't paint. But these drawings are like the reflection of his nightmares. The idea was he didn't complete it. He didn't do what he wanted. So he couldn't basically publish and have an influence, especially on anatomy and other studies. And so probably the last of his thoughts must have been like, you know, a sense of unfulfilled. Anyway, he bought with him the Mona Lisa, which have you been to the Louvre? You've seen it?
Yeah, this one spent like half an hour.
Yeah, it's in December I took a picture and it was crazy. There was a line like an hour to get close to it, and then you could just most people just took a selfie and then walked out. You see, there's a long, long line, and then you get, because it's been moved. It's not in the room when it used to be before. I don't know how long ago have you been. Yeah, it's been moved to another part now. Anyway, why the Mona Lisa is so famous? Is this the right one I have? Yeah. So first of all, who is Mona Lisa? It's Lisa Gherardini, which was the wife of Francesco del Giocondo, which was a merchant. Probably in the time where Leonardo was still in Florence, around 1504, this portrait was commissioned. He never finished it, or didn't finish it on time. Anyway, for some reason, it wasn't given to them. At that time, he was also in touch with other ladies to make portraits, including Isabella d'Este, which is a very influential and powerful lady of the Renaissance, the mother of a Cardinal d'Este, but which I don't have here. Anyway, she was very influential, very powerful. Leonardo never made a portrait for her, but she requested him one. Anyway, he worked on this painting, according to some art historians, for up to 10 years. And that explains the reason why, one of the reasons why it's so important, because it has an extreme level of details. Look at the hair, look at the level. The hair actually has one by one hand painted. Can you see them?
Mm.
Have you got this on the TV now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have done my hair. And then there's another element here: the studies of how the light falls on the face. We know from a number of sketches that he did a lot of studies on the light and the change of the shading on the face, and this is reflected here. And we know he changed it a few times, although probably part of it has been discolored. So probably the eyebrows, they were there, but the paint probably faded. Because although certain people believe that it was the fashion to shave them, they found traces of pigment, so probably there must have been, there's some also that are visible here, so probably there must have been, they analyzed it and they think they must have been there, and then it must have fell. And then the thing that we saw also before in the Madonna, the landscape being all the way up to the head. In this case, we only see a little wall, so she's on a loggia, but we can only see a little detail of the loggia. And then the detail of the hands, which is really mind-blowing. In this case, she hasn't got any jewel, any symbol, any like pearl or other things. If we compare it with another famous portrait, which is also at the Louvre, where is it? The Belle Ferronnière here. For example, in this case, she's got a nice pendant. She's got this jewel, which actually was used as a name, the thing that she has on the forehead. She's got a net for the hair. And although she looks at us quite in a straight way, of course, with the background being back and then having this kind of wall here, it hasn't got the same magnetism. It hasn't got the same elements. The dress is quite rich. While in this case, the Mona Lisa, she's got although is a nice dress, it's quite plain and quite dark. It doesn't distract you from her face, basically the sides, which is very enigmatic, and also the expression of the mouth, which is she's not smiling, but she's not sad. It's a kind of a expression of the lips, as if she's about probably to say something, or she's just holding something before to say. So it's got a lot of room for like speculation. It makes you imagine so much. And then again, the transparent veil, really clear transparent veil, which as well was made using very thin layers of clear paint. So there is an 10 years worth of work here. Although the Mona Lisa is very damaged, you can see the stains because it was never really restored until the 20th century, although it was kept pretty well. When Leonardo died, this and two more paintings were sold to the King of France. Francesco Melzi inherited all of Leonardo's artworks, including all the sketches and the books, with the order to publish them. So he should have ordered published. But Melzi, the first thing he did afterwards is he married, and then 2 years later he died because he was shot. So he didn't have a very long life. So the books and everything else ended up in a collection of a merchant that sold it, not just selling different sheets singly. Sometimes he cut different drawings off the paper and sold it single images cut off. So that's the dispersion of Leonardo's artwork. And Leonardo's as a inventor and a scientist was quickly forgotten. We have to wait the 18th century before Leonardo is rediscovered again, especially in the 1800s, when of course lots of inventions that he foresaw were start to be made. And so the experiments, the bicycles, a number of things that he thought so, he foresaw in his age. The Mona Lisa is also a landscape, which some recent study had identified in a region and between Tuscany and Le Marche, while the bridge, it's a bridge near Ponte di Buriano, near Arezzo. So it's the Tuscany countryside, or Central Italy countryside that he probably knew well. But there probably might not be a specific meaning for that. It's just that the idea that he, of course, copied elements that he liked in order to create this kind of mysterious landscape. And also, the landscape reflects the mystery of the female nature, of the nature of the woman, which is also a kind of topic of Renaissance art, whether it's related to the Virgin Mary, whether it's related to female beauty or female nature. There's always this idea of mystery and kind of enigmatic aspect. The other two paintings that he had with him were this Madonna with Santan and the child playing with a lamb, where the Madonna is sitting on the legs, on the lip of the mother Santan, which is very unusual as well, very lively. And again, we have these beautiful mountains, we have the attention for the nature. There are certain elements which Leonardo paid a lot of attention. Look at the rocks underneath the feet. It's very, very, and there is this nice familiar scene. In these elements, we can find the memory that Leonardo had of his childhood and of the mother. You can see there's a lot of sweetness with the mother and the child. I consider that he was basically probably by the age of 2, then he didn't see his mother anymore because, of course, she was a farmer. She wasn't allowed to be, next to the child. Now, the Mona Lisa had some sisters. She has some sisters. This is the sister from the Museo del Prado. It's a copy that was made probably, soon after the King of France acquired it. Now, the Mona Lisa was not visible to the public for a long time because it was kept in the castle of Fontainebleau, one of the residents of the King of France, till at least the 1700s, when it was then moved to the Louvre. But it took another probably 100 years before the Louvre opened to the public. But there were a number of copies, I think 10 or 12 or so. This is probably the most accurate, although the range of color is different, and it could have been probably more similar to the range of color Leonardo. Now, Leonardo experimented a lot, and he used a lot of different animal fats and different minerals and organic materials to mix with the paint to obtain different effects. And that could be one of the reasons why the Mona Lisa has all a number of stains and a number of damages in the pigment, because according to what you put, if you put, for example, one of the things they use like glue from the fat of rabbits, or they use the fish glue from the fat of the fish, and they of course get rancid, and they get brown and dark because they change according to the light. So this could be a reason for the damages. The figure is pretty the same, but the way she looks at us is not the same. The smile, is similar, but it's not that smile. So this also makes us think how unique is the Mona Lisa, and it's the result of all the effort she put. There's another one which I call the ugly one. This is more similar to the Mona Lisa, but the face is very different. Of course, the background here is faded completely. These were all on wood. It's a little poplar wood, maybe 30 by 60 or something like that, or 40 by 60, something like that. And then the other two paintings he bought, the other painting he took with him and they were bought by the King of France, is this one, the Salai. Salai was Giacomo Caprotti, was a young apprentice of Leonardo, and he was a thief. He stole from him at least 3 times, and he caused a lot of trouble, but he was really good looking, and probably Leonardo was in love with him too. So he was always, forgiven and was allowed to be him. Actually, Leonardo left to him part of his inheritance. He left some fields outside of Florence that he inherited from his uncle to this man here. And probably this man was the subject who was the model for the portrait of St. John. And some people believe that he looks a lot like Mona Lisa too, which I do not agree. People want to prove that a lot that it could have been either him dressed as a woman, or maybe Leonardo himself. Part of the mouth, the lips, part of the sides, for some people look similar. Anyway, this St. John has not much of a saint. It looks more like a satyr or like a pagan god. It looks more like a devil than a saint. But anyway, has the hand pointing up the sky, to the Annunciation of Jesus Christ. And this is as well at the Louvre. And a couple of last things that before we finish. Now, Leonardo wanted to have an influence and an impact as a scientist, but he actually never completed a working machine of this kind, especially when he started to study the flight of birds. Of course, he invented some techniques to create, flying thing. He probably even he invented the parachute. There is a parachute also he designed, and also there is, of course, the idea of the airplane. And there's also like a kind of how do you say, paragliding machine, which one man actually used in the outskirts of Florence. He did the jump using a Leonardo inspired, or Leonardo, and then he ended up. Do you know how it ended up?
Something. Broke something?
No, yeah, he just he ended up like dying, making a hole in the ground. He made the jump nearby where now is the Florence airport. So 500 years later, there's something to remind that. And there is a marble inscription. Let me see if I can find it. It's a bit more complex, but maybe I can find it. Peretola. Let's just search it. Peretola. Okay. I'm not sure I don't remember where it is. But anyway, there is a marble inscription. Peretola Leonardo. No. doesn't match. I can't find it now. Anyway, and it was only like much later than they discovered that, you know, Leonardo was right about the helicopter and other inventions. Last thing is, what was Leonardo doing when he worked for the King of France? What was his main activity for the King of France?
Don't know.
Come you don't know? Dice che avete studiato. So he was basically designing scenery for parties, costumes, outfits. He designed a lion machine similar to this, but a mechanic one that could walk and then open up, and from inside his belly, some lily flowers, the symbol of France, came out. So he basically, and then also outfits, costumes, Turkish costumes. You have also in the exhibition as well. There were some drawings. I think I don't have them here, but I think there were. So basically, he ended up doing something very different from what he planned, and that was quite common actually back then, to have you know, an artist making the backgrounds, making the this part of decoration, rather than the you know, making the engineering design or making. He did design a castle, a fortress, a palace for the king that then inspired the construction of another one, but he actually didn't do anything major rather than, you know, finishing up his notes. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed your talk, and now it's question time.
It was very interesting, Mario. We learned a lot of new things, like something we knew, but it was so entertaining how you structure.
Thank you. So usually I do these talks with about 10-15 people, so there's more conversation, there's a little drink, and it's quite social.
It's so nice. It's like I lost track of time when I was listening to you.
Thank you. And so next time we should go to Florence, and we should do it by seeing it in reality.
You know that in Lviv there is a Leonardo Museum where they built all the machine coming from his design.
Yeah, there is there are also, there are two in Rome. Leonardo Museums had all the machines rebuilt, and then there's one by the Vatican. Another one is it's Palazzo La Cancelleria. And then of course there's one in Florence. There is one in Venice. There are several Leonardo museums. Let me see.
You know, when you were telling, you know, like the story, I started realizing that he must have felt unrealized. You know, like not fulfilled, really. And then now we appreciate how foreseen he was. And this time he felt like he was a bit like, you know, maybe not fulfilled. Well, I had this impression from, I mean, today I started thinking about that.
Yeah, no, he actually left. That's correct. He actually left also a note in his diary when he says, "Oh dear, who's this guy?" Where he says, can't remember the exact word, but something like, "If you have lived a full life, then you can go and die satisfied." But he probably had some kind of feeling of unsatisfaction because he didn't do what he wanted to do. I got it wrong again. Let me see if we can get inside the Leonardo da Vinci Museum. I haven't seen this museum.
He lived in, you know, like all this work. He had he felt like persecuted, you know, spine, and I think also
you're breaking up a little bit. I can't hear you very well.
She was saying that during his life he had this strong feeling that they were spying on him, and
yeah, it was. That's
but was it something real, documented somehow, or was just in his mind?
The thing is, because he practiced a lot of research, and he also the dissectioning of the bodies, and he made a lot of experiments. He was considered like a wizard or an heretic, so I think it was real. I know, for example, for sure it was spied in Rome. They had spies on him. That's sure. In other parts of his life, I'm not sure. The fact also that he writes in that way, it could have been why writing in the opposite way, because he didn't want people to read. The other Da Vinci Museum, it's here in this beautiful courtyard, Palazzo della Cancelleria, which is a Renaissance building, and it's here. Yeah, you see the machines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Leonardo's bridge, and the machines, and they are nice didactic museum. One thing I don't like of these museums, they don't let you touch and try them, or at least not in this one. In others they might. This is beautiful. The palace is beautiful. And of course, try to guess who is the owner of this palace.
Vatican.
Of course. Questo tra l'altro è extraterritoriale, so this is actually is like a Vatican City. You need to talk this way, I think.
Who he bequested his paintings? I didn't pick that up. It wasn't the King of France, right?
The three one I bought in Paris. Yeah, the King of France bought them. The Mona Lisa only, I think, was paid 4,000 ducats, which was or Fiorini. I think they used the Fiorini there, which was a really high amount, a large amount of money. It was like 2 years worth of wage of a painter. So it was a lot of money. I read somewhere someone said, "Oh no, it was." Rai, the Italian television, made a documentary on Leonardo for the anniversary of that, and they said that the Mona Lisa was a gift that Leonardo made to the King of France, but it was paid good money. What gift? There's nothing free on this earth. He was paid good money, so the French didn't see. Now the last thing, you know that a few years ago there was the Salvator Mundi it was discovered about 100 years ago, but they didn't realize it was his until not much long ago when it was restored, and then was sold at an auction for about $350 million, which is the highest bid was ever paid. It was bought by one of the prince. I can't remember his name, but he's one of the Emirates prince, who was supposedly to go in the Louvre that is being built in Dubai, where the Louvre Paris has a cooperation with Dubai, but actually this is kept now on the private yacht of this prince, and this hasn't been seen since it was purchased 3 or 4 years ago when Sotheby's sold it. And although some art historians has criticized the fact that it might not be his or not, because we know this subject was made by Leonardo, and we know that it's one of his mature artworks. There are some certain elements, certain details. I don't have a very good picture, but certain details of the figure and other elements that may think that this the one that we know about Leonardo. There's also other copies, so it's not the only one, but this they believe is really the one. Although it's invisible because the Saudi prince has it in his office, and
probably without realizing.
No, it's just to show what money can buy, because they're not even Christians, so I don't know what they do with it. And then that the Mona Lisa was stolen in 1911. An Italian man entered the Louvre Museum and put the painting into a bag and walked out with the luggage, like a big, those big paper bags that they use. He walked in and put it in the bag and walked out. And of course, nobody realized at that time museums didn't have any security because it was just public museums. And then a year later, he approached the director of the Uffizi Gallery. He wanted to sell it to the Uffizi, and he wanted to pass for a hero that retrieved the Mona Lisa that was stolen by the French. Now, it's true that during the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon really raided hundreds and thousands of artworks. Many of them are still in the Louvre, like the Borghese collection and a few others. The horses of St. Mark's in Florence, for example, a number of statues for the Vatican, a number of paintings, including the Caravaggio, the now is the Pinacoteca. So there's a number of artworks, but the Mona Lisa not. It was already there. And so when he approached the director of the museum, then the police came. He was arrested. He spent like 3 months in jail. And the Mona Lisa was on a exhibition for a few months in Florence, so people could see it before being returned. And then there's the magazine here that says, "Oh, the Gioconda has been found again, and it was this guy that basically stole it." He thought it would have been a hero, and then he ended up in jail. And he was actually found in an hotel room. He had this under his bed in an hotel nearby the Duomo of Florence, which is how do you close this? The hotel now is called Mona Lisa. I show you. So if you go to Florence, you can stay there. It's quite a nice hotel. They also have a penthouse with a private bathtub. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm promising Alessandro that I will bring him there with my first good salary.
Yeah, you can. Let me see. Where is it? I think it's. Sbagliato. Let me see if I can show it to you, because I'm lost now. This is the square. This is Alviero Martini, the one that designs the bottles for our friends Pedrona.
Yeah.
Is the one with the maps printed on the bags. Oh. No, maybe it's closed. Anyway, it's around here. There's this beautiful. I can't find it now.
We'll give a look when we will be in.
It's around here. There is a Grom. No, I can't find it here. But they don't show up in all of them. Oh, maybe it's here. No, qui c'è il Museo del Piccolo. I don't know. I can't find it. Sorry. I thought I could. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the talk. If you got any more questions, where